Hi John.
Hi John, how are you?
Another week on the rake. How are you?
Good.
How was your week?
It's good.
Well, yeah. It was. Unfortunately, there was one of our workmates but we won't go into that.
He had a death in the family.
Death in the family, but I'm sure
A well publicised
one.
So it's been a kind of I suppose a subdued mood in the.
There is actually, we're very close here, and but all we can do is
support him,
and support the family as best we can, But
so that was our week.
That was our week, John. Unfortunately, but we're going on to another big problem, John, which is getting very, very prevalent. I think is homelessness.
Yeah, I noticed they leave out these figures every month or so, and new record highs. Seems to me we break the charts the whole time on people in temporary accommodation, and it says essentially homeless. And you can imagine that sounds like, but they have a roof over their head. They don't. They're in a hotel room. So if you're in a hotel room, you've got a bathroom. Your child is trying to do their homework in the same room you sleep in.
That's right.
I mean, there's no sense of kind of their own personal space or anything. So it is homeless, and it's very temporary. So I suppose there's a lot of reasons why people become homeless, and families become homeless because sometimes, I suppose, imagine you're in private rented accommodation, and the landlords are saying that there's not much breaks for them, and it's not cost effective for them, so they want to pull out. And because it's a buyer's market in houses, and say if you inherited a house and you've always rented it, but you said, I could do with that bulk money now, I need it for me, which is a person's right. And suddenly that person is told, I'm sorry, but we're selling up, and we're going to be selling the house, and they'll sell fairly quick now, and you'll get it probably 20% above the market value and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that person is even given the required notice, which I think I'm not sure how much that notice is, but the problem is they can't get an affordable house as a replacement that you hear about on a house going, and they'll be queues to view it, and then they're paying
way above the average.
Way above the average. I mean, there's houses going in the likes of Raheen and Castletroy, and they're over 2,000 a week in rent.
Oh, they would be.
Because they're aiming for professionals that would 5 rooms or whatever. I mean, that's not attainable for people. And then say, people can't buy houses because there's so much of a deposit needed, and the cost of houses is so high, and banks aren't giving out the mortgages unless you two almost professional kind of salaries coming into the house. So remember the days like before, like they used to say, like one person a good wage and one person could stay at home and raise the kids.
That's right.
Well gone. No, you can't. Well, you can unless you have the house already, maybe, and you're in.
But even with the house already, John, you're finding it hard because if you have a mortgage or you're paying energy bills, because it's kind of a partnership now. The two people have to work.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it's precious that around the kids.
Yeah, I mean, to give children, ideally, children need that amount of attention that sometimes the parents come in and might get an hour with them before they have to go to bed. That's not ideal for a family anyway. But look, that is what it is. So I suppose the definition of homelessness in this country anyway is you're considered homeless if one of the following applies. So there is no accommodation available to you and any other person that normally lives with you that you can reasonably stay in. This is in your local authority's opinion. So, like the stock of social housing, before I should put your name in the housing list, and this kind of stuff. But there isn't a stock of.
I think it's a 3-year wait list, I think, on the housing list. No, I think it would be about that. I heard that. No, that could be.
So, if you're living in a hospital or a county home, night shelter, or other such institution, and you are living there because you have no suitable accommodation, because there are people who have to go into Simon have places there on Clare Street, and they're one-room houses, and they could be people with problems, could be addiction problems, and that fluctuates. The person living next to you could change, and they could be violent, and they're not. They're not
ongoing.
No, it's not. Or you're unable to provide accommodation from your own resources. Again, can you afford what the going rate is? And minimum wage, all right, it's considered high, compared to other countries, but at the end of the day, it's still not enough to pay these rents.
Well, the cost of living is not higher.
And the cost of living, it is, and it's massively higher. It used to be Austria, I think, was the costliest country to live in Europe. I think it's us now. So you can talk about high social welfare all we want, but that's fine, and high minimum wage, or what's considered high. But realistically, if you still can't pay for these basics, there's a thing called you were always considered. I remember growing up, if someone was working, you weren't in poverty. That was it. You worked, you weren't in poverty. It was great, I have a job, therefore I'm not in poverty. But now there's working poverty, and there's people making the choice to fill the fridge or put on the heat. And they're working. I mean,
that's a tough decision, though, John.
Yeah, it's a tough decision, but that's wrong. It's inherently wrong, and that's where I suppose the inequalities in society, in that, that's why they try sometimes to get the very rich to pay the extra taxes, and then to attract the very rich who have the businesses, you're trying to keep the taxes at a certain point where it's still attractive to them, and
it's hard to balance, really.
It's hard. I suppose it is hard to balance, but at the end of the day, and the supports, there's grants for this and that. It's grand giving a grant for a solar panel, but realistically, that's not really your priority. It's the roof first.
The roof.
So in general, you may also be considered homeless if you're sleeping rough. That's an obvious one. Stay in an emergency hostel or refuge, which we have too many people, and children especially, which breaks your heart.
It's detrimental to the kids.
Absolutely. It's going to affect their childhood and psyche, and you see some of those kids will need therapy going forward.
Down the line,
staying in bed and breakfast or hotel accommodation on a temporary basis, which is same thing like the hostels, really. Staying temporarily with friends or family, you used to call it couch surfing. And when you're in college, not really, but you'd hear the Americans say, I'm couch surfing at home, which means no fix the boat. I've heard of people, like, if you go on there's a website called Reddit, which is like people going for advice on different subjects, but there's an Irish one, and there'd be students asking, hi, I got a place in NUI in Galway, do you know, is there a kind of a safe car park for me to park, because I'll be living in my car? Oh, you're hearing things like that. That's homelessness.
Yeah, but I don't know whether it's true or not, John.
And people answer that, by the way, there is a car park. And oh my
God, there was actually a lecturer from UL as well, couldn't find a place down there.
Yeah.
He was coming
I heard that as well,
part of the
guards. I've heard guards.
Yeah. So
nurses. They were always the esteemed professions. You need a degree to be a nurse. You go and do your degree, you think, that's it, I have a degree, I'm professional. I'm going to be at least okay. I'm in my chosen field. And money won't be an issue because I'll have enough to live comfortably, which, money obviously wouldn't be the major factor. You become a nurse, more vocational, and I get that. But you'd at least have the knowledge that part's there, so you don't have to worry about it. But now you have to worry about it, and that's just dire.
And plus, a lot of kids are coming back home again. Like, there's some people up 30s, even in their 40s, are living with their parents now, and that's hard for them as well, because you feel your life is going over.
You do.
If you're with a partner, it's tough because the partner's coming into a house as well. Living under
someone else's kind of rules,
under rules and things like that. So it's a knock-on effect all the time.
You're going to clash because you want your own space, and you'll have different ideas on how you want to manage that space. And essentially, you're in someone. They might be your parents, but you're in their house.
You're still in their house. Yeah.
So, I suppose we just to talk about practical support. So for people on the cusp of homelessness or people that are in that situation, so there's no legal right to housing in Ireland. We must be clear. However, local.
That's a big. Sorry, John, for cutting across. That's a big thing there, because even in some of the voting and things like that,
they're saying we should do.
We have a right to housing, so that's kind of stated there, which. A lot of people.
It's not embedded. I don't think it's embedded in a constitution.
But we kind of take for granted that we're all entitled to housing, which unfortunately.
We're a very socially minded country in that we have these values. I suppose we'd like to get universal healthcare. That's another, and like in America, they don't. A lot of them, it's not your basic right. Why they reckon after somebody needs an ambulance, they'll get an Uber instead, because the ambulance
can't afford it.
Can be over 4 figures. So I suppose we do have this thing in this country because we do look after the weakest members of society. And any countries that where unions were prevalent and labour movements and all this, we've come through, like after all the struggle for women's votes and all that, we tend to kind of look at more vulnerable members of our society and kind of mind them a bit. And so I suppose, but you'd automatically think there's a right to housing, but there isn't.
There isn't,
It just isn't.
Just seeing it there now,
Now it's like, but the way if you don't have medical insurance, which you go to hospital, they'll still treat you. It's just the bill will come afterwards. So the universal healthcare, even though it's not there, you're not going to be left to.
Oh, you won't be left to.
But
well, in fairness, you have a number of rights or a duty of care.
A duty of
which
care.
Is fairness, which we're lucky here in Ireland that they
with housing, we don't. So local authorities have a responsibility to provide housing for adults who cannot afford it themselves. That's the however. So there's kind of somewhat of it, but as you said, a 3-year waiting list. So TUSLA must provide accommodation for children who are homeless or in need of care, because TUSLA would be the kind of advocates for children's rights and everything in this country. and they would be the ones that would work with preschools to ensure like a high standard of education and all that kind of
Which
rights
is good,
for
John.
kids.
Yeah.
So they would. That's where they end up in B&Bs. So I suppose we were just looking for who's responsible for the housing of homeless people. So the local authorities' responsibilities. They provide either housing directly. Like I come from social housing in that, where I grew up, it was rented from the council and eventually the rent to buy.
Yeah. Then you went to rent to buy.
And then you did the rent to buy, which all these schemes were good, but there was a stack of housing back then.
Oh, but John, you could go on the housing list. You get a house.
You could.
We went on the housing list on a Friday.
You could turn
got a
down
house on a Monday.
places. I know, I'm not from there.
Yeah, we got a house on a Monday.
So also the local authority can also provide housing through arrangements with approved housing bodies and other voluntary bodies, like you're talking included and stuff like that. Because I know up there and down by the station they put all those townhouses and apartments there, where the older flats, we used to call them, at the bottom of Kerry's Road, meets Hyde Road. So they would have a lot of input into that.
And they're actually fantastic.
They're great units. They are great units. They're modern. They're great units.
You speak with a bit of pride where they live as well,
So as we said, TUSLA, they're responsible for providing the accommodation for children under 18 who are homeless or in need of care. So we have housing policies now. So the government's policy on homelessness is based on a housing-led approach. Seems an obvious one, but it is. So we've Housing for All. In 2021, Department of Housing published the Housing for All. It was a new housing plan for Ireland. The plan sets about the government's housing plan for Ireland to 2030, which we're closing in on, I suppose. One of the plan's aims is to end homelessness by 2030. They have a long way to go. Tell them that. So there's 4 different pathways. So supporting home ownership and increasing affordability. So how do they support home ownership? With the banks. So it needs to be more attainable. It's certainly.
But the banks, you're not.
No, you're not. And not everyone earns that kind of money.
No, the banks, you're not given a chance with the banks.
No, and ending homelessness, so increasing social housing delivery and supporting inclusion. So increasing new housing supply. You can see the building has gone up, but I don't think they're what is it 10-15% off their targets for the year?
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So addressing vacancy and efficient use of existing housing stock. You do still walk past decrepit or rundown places and they've no business. They're there and they're rotting, and the longer they rot, the more expensive they are.
It's going to be so revamp. John, I'm putting you on the spot here as well now. There was a relation of ours tried to get on the housing list, and when you have all your details and you went down to, you might know this, but they were told they were earning too much. Is there a cut-off point?
I think there is, and it used to, what they often say is there's a thing called the pinched middle. There's you earn too much to be considered for social housing, but you don't earn enough to get a mortgage.
That's what they're in
so
between.
There's some initiatives coming through. You hear it in different councils around the country that they kind of try to provide housing you're essentially not getting social housing rates because you can afford a little bit more. But you are still getting a fair rate, and because
so they're
because you can't just leave a whole demographic out. No. You shouldn't be punished for doing better for yourself. People go back to college and they might get a better job or they work up the ladder a bit, but they're still not on those 6-figure sums. And they can't get a mortgage, and it's as simple as that. And what's supposed to happen? So here's your reward. Your reward is where kind of you don't get caught on this side, and you won't get caught on this side. So you're in the middle, and you're kind of.
They're lucky to be renting with a decent landlord, but still they're paying $1,500 a month.
A decent landlord, but he's charging them well into the rate.
He's well, it is a fairly big house they're in as well.
Is it? He probably could get more.
He could get more for it, in fairness to him now. But someday he might turn around. Different circumstances could happen to this person, and he might have to end up selling.
Yeah.
And then these are the floating people. Then they're in the middle. They can't get a mortgage and can't get on
the rent is ridiculous.
On the housing list. So,
because as you said, if it's a big house, I'm talking a few bedrooms. So, if they were to sell that goes back into rent again.
Yeah.
So you're talking, we could get 4 professionals now, and they could all pay for it, and so they could look for more money.
Well, I suppose if
you could,
it's natural.
Essentially,
in the morning, if we wanted a house that we were renting.
Yeah.
You're going to look down that road as well. It's human. I know we curse people that are doing it, but it's only human nature as well.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with being a landlord.
There's nothing wrong with being a landlord, And
some of them I would never do it.
No, I don't think it'd be a landlord.
It's tainted now on both sides.
Yeah.
And like, but the landlords who, like, they inherit the mum and dad dies, and you inherit a house, you have
right.
your own, you're
You have
set
your own
up.
house, yeah.
You know,
So you try to make it work for you.
so you try to make it work, pay off the rest of your mortgage,
Yeah.
you know, have a consistent flow of, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
You
there's
come
nothing
in-
wrong with that,
every- Like, you come into a little bit of money, or
Yeah.
come into an inheritance, and like everyone deserves that.
Yeah.
And then you decide maybe to sell it or after a while, because that's your right as
yeah,
well. So
yeah,
you
it
can't
is, of
really
course.
punish.
You're not actually punishing the big person that you have renting the house.
No.
And you can't be punished either, because it is your
Yeah.
it is your right, you know.
And you can't be responsible as a private person in the
For having
country
these people
for
there,
maintaining or trying to advocate against the social ills of the country, which essentially the
Yeah.
government
Yeah.
has that responsibility in society.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I suppose now there has to be a bad guy and a good guy. And
But they blame the landlord. Then you can't, like, those guys aren't in it to make big bucks. They're just trying to. If I had, like, I have a mortgage. If I had an opportunity to pay off my mortgage, make it easier for me, of course you're going
Of course
to.
you would, yeah.
And it's legal and it's
Of course
above
you would,
board,
yeah.
and it's
Yeah, of
just
course you
your
would. Yeah.
inheritance that you
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
right to get.
Yeah,
It's,
and the
but I
second
wouldn't.
home, you're
I
gonna-
wouldn't wish it on the board.
on a
of the
second
landlord
home
stuff.
anyway, you're going to be more likely paying a tax on it. So
No.
you're even get to pay something on that. So you need to be renting it out, or you can't just leave it standing there, kind of, you know. So we understand it. Sorry, John, for going
No,
off.
you're
kilter
grand.
there.
I suppose the other stuff is housing first. They work to secure permanent, secure accommodation with extensive wraparound supports for people who are sleeping rough, been in emergency accommodation for a long time. These wraparound supports just mean, like, multi-layered, kind of multidisciplinary approach to kind of solving these problems, which is essentially the more different organisations that
Yeah.
come to help. So it's like even ourselves here with education, we're involved with the ETB, we're involved
Yeah.
with the HSE. The more
Different
you get,
branches, well, yeah.
the more you do have involved with a
Yeah.
project, the more likelihood it'll
The
be
better
successful. So
results,
it's the
yeah,
same with
yeah,
these.
yeah.
So these wraparound supports can include health support. So you got your HSE, mental health issues as well. So you got HSE, you got your Simon communities, you got your Novas. So Novas would help with temporary accommodation. You have an organisation like Crosscare. You know, there's also a youth homelessness strategy. So the government have a 3-year youth homelessness strategy in November 22. It focuses on ending homelessness for young people aged 18 to 24. So the main aims are to prevent them from entering homelessness in the first place, improve the experiences of young people entering homelessness. So if they're already in there, how can you improve them? So education is key and stuff.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
education, there's a great organisation, DEPS in Limerick, and they do education about drugs. And because, you know, it can seem like a very good kind of like fun thing to do for a while, but to slip into addiction, and alcohol is included in
Yeah,
that. It's very hard to get out
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
And that's when a lot of homeless people have hit addiction or mental health issues because they haven't had the supports, and it's very hard to get out of that without the support.
Well, also you're in a position that you find you know helpless,
Yeah,
and you can tend to turn to something that's going to numb the pain for a while. You know, unfortunately.
But and the reason they're in it is because they've slipped into it through that, which is I mean, so I suppose you do see. I mean, remember there was a lad there. He's passed away. He was homeless. He used to be standing up there years ago. John, do you remember? He was from originally out the country.
I used to try and do the
he used to
books
sleep in a
outside,
kind of
That's
it looked
right.
like a little shed somewhere off the Ballysimon Road. And
yeah.
he was found dead there one.
That's right.
And he used to come in here, and I think on registration they used to come in here just to see if there was a bit of free grub going.
That's right.
And you know, he'd sign up to a class, but we'd never see him again.
He was only a young man. Like.
He was hard to tell, wasn't it? Because the beard and but, you know, if you take away the red face from the. Because he drank a lot.
He drank a lot,
Clearly blood pressure and the beard. There was a young man there who originally had hopes and dreams and ambitions
Every couple of months
passed away.
then he would be donated clothes by other people and take them away. And,
Those oversized jackets. I
the
love
beard,
them. They'd be about 3 sizes too big.
Good misfortune and all that. And you'd be like a different man there, you wouldn't know him, you know. But
you go back into these drink and and it's the support for those people as well, that they're not written off, that they're not collateral damage in a society that's looking after people. That, like, it's good to look after people who are already kind of functioning, and we have to, but then there's those lads as well, and they make up a good portion of homelessness as well. And you have your Simon communities and all that kind of that Novas and all that.
Tough.
It is tough. So look, I mean, it's complicated and it's not complicated. The complicated part is the kind of reasons people slip into it, and how we can tackle those at a very kind of a young age, early intervention and all that kind of stuff. But it's not that complicated in that we need more social housing, we need more affordable rates for people to get mortgages, and we need to stop bloody vulture funds being allowed, or kind of, these conglomerates coming and buying houses. That's disgusting, disgraceful, and any government that supports it should be really frowned on.
Yeah.
And we're not political here, even though
that it should be stopped.
It's just there's so many kind of things that's simple to me, that part of it. Then you can tackle all those reasons that people slip into addiction and all this, and where we could catch that, and why they haven't had the support. The young parents haven't had the support to show the kids the right way. We can tackle those complicated issues that are more that have more little diverse parts to them. That's fair enough, and there are groups that will do that. But as of just maintaining a proper housing stock and the banks and that, I think it's straightforward what we need to do.
Was there enough around, say, I'm not saying I'm not from originally an underprivileged part of Limerick myself, which was South Hill, but was there a thing there a while back, John, that you could buy a house in South Hill or Weston or something at a reduced rate, a derelict house? I was talking to someone about that. I don't really know that a person said it could be living alongside a derelict house, and they could buy.
I'm not too sure.
That off the corporation.
I know houses in those areas were traditionally always very cheap.
They were cheap just to buy
put a lot of money.
Yeah.
There was a lot of working people in South Hill. I had friends in O'Malley Park and stuff, and I remember a lot of working people in South Hill. I remember there was a truck driver and his wife who were there, and they'd done loads to the house, big extension and all, but I remember they got a value to sell, and this would be in the late 80s when the South Hill was getting a bit, there was some social issues up there. I remember him being offered a paltry amount. And it's location, unfortunately, came into that.
My mother and father sold the house for, I think it was 30,000. Yeah, that's in the 90s.
My mother sold the house in Carey's Road, which isn't a million miles away, but quite enough area, but it's after Roxborough Road there. But I remember the council bought it back.
Yeah, the council bought it back off my mum.
Yeah, but it was at a more, it was better.
30
location, isn't it? And I suppose, do you remember the old days, is you were going for a job, if you were from South Hill or Weston or any of these areas that had social issues and you had an address that you could use somewhere else, you were advised to do so.
Yeah, my aunt's address,
which is...
And she was in Prospect at the time,
having a chance from the start.
You having a chance? No.
A young man or young woman that wants to get going and do something with themselves, but their address is the wrong side of the tracks, as in some people's eyes.
Everyone has the same ambition when they're young. People don't turn around and just lack ambition, like all young people. And it, as you said, being dictated from the wrong side of town or whatever. Unfortunately, there's a lot of.
Well, even if they don't have it themselves, the reason they don't have it, it's not instilled by. That's why parenting classes and skills and all that. It's very. We do all this stuff now here, child development through play and parenting classes, because sometimes the obvious to me and you mightn't be obvious to everyone, and they just want a little bit of guidance. And then they're the fabric root causes of people. They're part of.
Into the next generation of this country,
stopping people ending up in homelessness could be the bottom. That could be the destination, and the journey could be addiction, and it could be poor parenting and not being looked after, being left to run around the road all night. Then they slip into addiction, then they're homeless, and there we go. See the causes.
It's a short life then, because unfortunately a lot of these people pass on. I was saying the local authorities carry out assessments of housing every year, John. Do they go around the town and see how many people are homeless? I suppose they know who's homeless.
I think they use a lot of statistics from your support groups, like Simon and all that as well, and St. Vincent de Paul and
Novus, I suppose, and everything.
Good organisations, very good organisations, but they're stretched. I mean, there are like, say if there's anyone out there and they're under the threat, or they feel like they might be under the threat of homelessness, like say a family now that's the landlord's thinking of selling up. There are a couple of, it's always good to get a solicitor if you can afford it.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you can't and you want to even get some extra support, there is the Community Law and Mediation on Henry Street. I think it's part of Intro, if I'm correct, and that's on 061 536 100. That's 061 536 100, and I think they open 9:30 to 5:30 Monday to Thursday, maybe close early on a Friday. So I'd check just in case. And there's another organisation, and they're national, and they're Threshold, they're called. So they would advise people who are on the cusp of homelessness as well. So that's 1-800-454-454. So it's 1-800-454-454. But if you can afford a solicitor, you pay for what you get as well. I know all these organisations are great, but they're probably overwhelmed. So if you had someone just working for you, it would be advisable if you got. Now I know it's not cheap, but sometimes these families aren't really. It's like they don't obviously have a lot of money, but they're not exactly in poverty. It's just because they're suddenly homeless. They're not in a position to get a new place.
And it's the situation they're in, And as we said earlier on in the show, you're in the middle.
Yeah.
You just barely have enough to be able to rent.
They could be.
And you'd get a fairly decent mortgage for
what
rent you're paying.
They're pinched middle,
But they're pinched then because they can't get on the housing list and they can't get a mortgage. So that's a bit unfair.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, which is unfair.
It is unfair.
And that's why a lot of people as well that haven't had a family, started a family or anything. That's why a lot of them are leaving again.
No, they can't afford it. And
you
here, do you know what? If I was on a day where if you have an issue with this, go out and vote. Go out and vote for the ones.
Well, that's it. Yeah. Make your vote count. Yeah, people fought for it,
I do. Sometimes you hear someone complaining with the government, which is everyone's right to do. But then they say, "Oh, but I never vote." But stop complaining then, because you're not.
Yeah.
I mentioned there was like thousands of people that do have that issue and they never vote. What way would their vote swing? Change? You don't know.
Their vote could mean.
You don't know.
Mean a lot. John, thanks again, John, for all the research. Brilliant show, John, and fair play to you.
Thanks, John.
Again, you put a lot of research into that, and we hope that helps people out there today that are listening. And look after yourselves, and hopefully, the information you can carry on. And
I'm sure maybe if someone has heard something there, and they might
hopefully we've helped people today. And hopefully situations change.
No one wants to see anyone.
No. We'd like to thank Limerick City Community Radio as well, and St Mary's Adult Education Centre, and of course John O'Sullivan here, the main honcho. And we hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Have a great rest of your weekend, and all the best.
Thank you.